Some of the most common mistakes are with false cognates. If you don't know what the word cognate means, it's basically a word that looks almost the same in two different languages. And they sound the same almost, oftentimes. But sometimes they mean the same thing, sometimes they don't. So in Russian, people say akkuratny, which means neat or punctual. But in English, accurate means correct, exact, something that is a correct statistic usually, or the measurement is accurate, meaning it's correct, it's exact. So neat, punctual, if you said someone is accurate, that would not make sense in this context. So faculty, in American English, we use faculty to mean the staff of a university, so, or of a school, high school we would say in English. So that's like your teachers, your administrators, principal. And in Russian, I know they say fakultet to mean like a department. You study in which faculty, which department. In English, we say department. If someone asks in America, in which faculty do you study, they won't understand what you mean unless they've studied Russian at some point. Rational. So in English, this means razumny or zdravi, someone who has a clear mind, who's thinking logically, who is making good decisions, correct decisions. In Russian, rationalny means like efficient, something that's done without much waste or done in a quick manner, economical manner. So actual, this is one of the most common ones I hear from Russian speakers. They say something is a very actual problem. In English, that doesn't make sense. You have to say that it's an urgent, pressing, or topical problem, or issue, or topic, urgent, pressing topic. So aktualny is a false friend. Really, it means in English, actual is like a real thing as opposed to a fake thing. So you'd say actually, na samom деле, or dar hakikat, actually, means like really, in fact. So it doesn't mean a topical, urgent, or pressing issue. You'd have to use a different word for those. So this one I also hear a lot, perspektivny. You say someone has perspectives. If you say that in English, someone has perspectives, that means they've seen a lot of the world. They understand other cultures and other worldviews, and so they have so many perspectives on life they can share. But really what you're trying to say is promising. If someone has a promising future, they are perspektivny. So if a idea, a project has good prospects, then it would be promising. But you can't say a person is perspective. You can say that they have prospects, which means they have opportunities to succeed. They're likely to succeed, but that's a difference there. So normal, when you ask someone in Russian, like, how are you? Как дела? Как у вас? And people say, нормальный. In English, in English, when you say that you are normal, it means you are like обычный, ordinary, typical, usual, typiczny. And so it sounds a little bit weird in English. I hear some people say it sometimes, more as a funny way of responding, like, oh, average, normal, regular. But you would normally say fine in English. Like, how are you? Instead of нормально, you'd say fine. I'm okay, I'm fine, everything's regular, normal. But if someone asks, how are you in America, you don't say normal. It sounds a little weird. Okay, this is one of my favorite categories, because if you're familiar with the term countable versus uncountable, this helps a lot, but I'll explain it. So some things, we can't count them, like water, for example. You know, when does one water end and one water begin? Water is a liquid. It flows together. There's not one water or two waters or 10 waters. You can have 10 bottles of water. So bottles are countable because you can count them. I have 100 bottles of water in the basement, or I have, 10 slices of pizza, something like that. So you have a unit which is countable. But a substance and certain other things, ideas, sometimes are not countable. And generally speaking, between all world languages, there's agreement, but there are exceptions. So let's see in Russian. Evidence research, equipment, advice, knowledge. In Russian, all of these things are countable. You can have evidences, researches, equipments, advices, and knowledges. In English, they are not countable. So do not say those things that I just said. You can only have evidence. There can be a lot of evidence. You can have some evidence, but you cannot have evidences. It doesn't sound good in English, and it's grammatically incorrect. Same thing with research. You can have many studies. So исследования could be studies, but not researches. That's not a word in English. Of equipment, many pieces of equipment, but you can't have equipments. If you want to give someone advice, that's just one thing. You can't give someone advices. If you want to say the equivalent of advices, you can say suggestions or tips, insights, ideas, depending on the context. But advice is just a singular form. Same thing with knowledge. You either have knowledge or you don't have knowledge. You can have a lot of knowledge or a little knowledge, but you can't have multiple knowledges, just the one knowledge. In English, we also have some differences from Russian. So we have plural forms, multiple forms of, and countable, I should say, countable forms of sports, policies, clothes, experiences, and statistics. So in Russian, this would be sport, which is, много видов спорта, you can say, but you can't say sporty. So we say sports. Politica, we say policies. You can have one policy on the environment, and you can have many policies. One on education, environment, one on law enforcement, one on health, COVID-19, whatever. Many different policies. Clothes, I'm wearing many different clothes today. So they are plural in Russian. Одежда is just singular. Experiences, opыт. In English, it's experiences. You have a good experience and a bad experience. If you're very old, you've had many, many experiences in your life. And statistics. Some statistics sound accurate, some don't. There are different kinds of statistics, so it can be plural and countable. One of the favorite things of Russian speakers is the passive voice. So instead of saying someone did something, you say something was done by someone, maybe, or you just say something was done. You can say a famous one is mistakes were made. I didn't make a mistake. I don't know who made the mistake. Let's just say mistakes were made by someone without saying who. That's an example of passive voice. There's also some expressions that Russians like to use, or Russian speakers, I should say, that start off news articles and other official statements, and they come up a lot in my work. And these are not bad, these are not wrong necessarily, but understand that some of these expressions are more common in the Russian language than they are in English. And so try not to use them so often. Try to find some diversity in your language. So in the framework of в рамках, for example, is very common in Russian, but not that common in English. It is planned that. This is a passive voice. Normally in English, you would say some organization or leader, politician, somebody is planning, not just it's being planned by Martians or, ghosts or clouds. Someone is planning, right? It has to be a human who is making plans. It is expected that. In English, we would say who expects. How many people expect this? Usually. You can use these terms in English, but we try to make them more active voice. It was discussed. We would say who discussed. At the round table, the ministers discussed. That's how we would say in English. The foreign minister discussed this with his counterpart. Not it was discussed by whom. We don't know. It was reported that. Who reported it? We want to know an actor, who is acting in these cases. We remind that in newspaper articles, especially in Russian, they will use that expression, напомним, we remind. But in English, we don't say that. Usually in articles, you don't say we or I. You try to avoid that whenever possible. And so you don't see that expression often. So these are just two examples you see on the other side of the screen. Two sentences where you see a passive voice from Russian. Once again, these are not incorrect sentences from a grammatical standpoint, but as you advance with English, you want to minimize your passive voice. Don't use it very often. This is a funny example. Probably you're all way too young to understand it, but this is from the movie Gone with the Wind and says, "Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn." And so if you put it into passive voice, it is a damn is not given by me, which makes it sound funny in English. And, I'm not supposed to talk like that. So some more Russianisms, as I call them. They are not agree. Do not say that, please. The right form in English is they do not agree, or you can say they are not in agreement. They do not agree, or they are not in agreement, or they did not agree in past tense. To remain indifferent, равнодушный, остаться равнодушным. So in English, we don't have a good equivalent for this. We just don't use this expression. Basically, an alternative would be that they care, that people, if they remain indifferent, they don't care. If they don't remain indifferent, then they do care. They're concerned, it matters to them, something like that. Of course, this one is very difficult for me. It annoys me a lot, frankly. And I would say, in general, just don't use the expression of course. Remove it from your vocabulary. It's difficult to use in a way which is not offensive or insulting in English. Most often you hear people say, of course, when they are answering a question. Did you do this? Will you do that? Is this the case? Or, something like that. And people say, of course, of course. In English, when you say that as a response, it means, of course, you idiot, why did you ask that question? You should know that already. And that's how it sounds. Obviously, that's not the whole sentence you're saying, but when you say, of course, that's what it means to the listener. So you should say yes, simply. Sure. You can also say, sure is more like agreement. You can say certainly if you want to emphasize certainly. You can say definitely, absolutely. Any of those options work. They don't sound offensive, and they have the same effect. But don't say, of course. It implies that the person you're speaking to is not that smart. So you can say it at the beginning of a sentence. Of course, we will check with all our colleagues before we move forward with this plan. Or, of course, I asked for permission before I went down that, went to that place. You can use it in that way, but never use it as a response to a question. So, hotel. I should reveal the answers here. I forgot. We've got answers. They do not agree. Of course, alternatives here are certainly, definitely, absolutely, or yes. It might be hard to see there, but in the Russian incorrect form, the O is stressed. In the correct English form, the E is stressed. So it should be hotel, not hotel. Hotel. Stress is on the second syllable. And I blame the Eagles. There's a musical group named the Eagles, and they had a famous song called Hotel California. And in the song, they pronounce it hotel because that's the way the rhythm goes. But they did that for the music, not because that's how they actually say it in English. And so now the whole world says hotel incorrectly. So this is another one. I will explain you later. I will explain you. So if you're saying I will explain you, that means you are a weird thing. And I need to explain what you are to someone else, that you are mysterious, confusing, strange. If I will explain to you, then you are explaining something else, a complicated topic or whatever, something about school or work, something. You are explaining that to you. So don't say I explain you. You have to have to in there. You must have to. Can you suggest me something? Can you suggest something to me? Another common mistake. So the one there on the right of your screen, can you suggest something to me, is the correct form. So I will call to him in Russian. I know it's a dative form, кому-то. And in English, it's винительный падеж. So it's I will call him later. So you don't need to, do not use to. And then also for questions, instead of asking a question to someone, we ask a question for someone, or we ask, you can say, I pose a question, zadat vaprosi, I pose a question to someone. But if you say, I have a question, you say, I have a question for you. I have one more question for you, sir. Can you answer my question? So questions are for. Another big one, don't say thanks God. In English, it sounds like you're talking directly to him or her, whatever you think. And so don't use that. It's like you're having a conversation. It's very colloquial. You might say that to your family member or friend or child. So when you say in English, the correct form is without the S. So just thank God. Thank God. Thank God we got to the airport on time and we didn't miss our flight. Thank God we stopped the car before that accident happened. And so what it means in English is that you should thank God, not that I am directly saying thanks to you right now. You're telling people, you should be grateful, you should be thankful. And this is not a religious expression necessarily. It is obviously to some extent, but people use it a lot, and a lot of people use it incorrectly. Some more little mistakes people make. Personal versus personnel. They do sound differently when pronounced. Personal is your own thing. Lichny, private. Personnel stresses on the last syllable. Personnel means employees. It's like, I think, a French word. It's another term for employees, workers, staff, personnel. Personal is your own, something related to you. Staff versus stuff. I see this written incorrectly a lot, and people also pronounce it incorrectly. I'm not sure if they know the difference, but there is a difference. Staff is like personnel, employees, workers. Stuff is things, veshi, a show. Stuff is like that. They are pronounced differently also. Stuff, staff. Quiet versus quite. This one I've heard a lot lately. It's starting to upset me. So there are differences, big differences between these two. Quite is a synonym basically for very, ochin, very, or davolna, you could say rather. But quiet means silent, something that's very not loud, the opposite of loud. So quiet or quite. And then another one I hear a lot of Russian speakers say, "Я чувствую себя." I feel myself. Do not say that in English. It sounds really weird. It means that you're touching your body while you're speaking. So don't say that. You just say, I feel. I feel sick. I feel happy. I feel good. I feel tired. Just drop the myself. Don't say that. Opportunity versus possibility. They are similar in some cases, but if you say like imkoniatho or возможности, that is oftentimes in English opportunities. So chances for you to succeed, typically. You could also fail, but it tends to have a positive context. This is a chance for something good to happen. You can take that chance and use it, or you can, miss that chance. Possibility is more like scientific almost. It's really, there's a chance anything could happen, right? An asteroid could hit us next month. That's a possibility, but it's not an opportunity, because it's not something that you have control over. And you're not going to take advantage of an asteroid hitting the Earth, most likely. So that's a possibility. It's a possibility that we'll get hit by a meteor. It's an opportunity to be given a job offer, or to get into a college, a university. You have an opportunity to get a scholarship, let's say. You have a chance, an opportunity. Some verb patterns. Must goes without to, no to with the word must. I must go, I must have it, I must sleep now, you must sit down, you must read this. Must without to. Same thing with let. So let me go, let me see, let me think about it a minute, let me check. So let is without to. Now, to almost synonyms, I would say. They mean basically the same thing. Have to and allowed to. Those have tos in them. So just remember these. You have to memorize them. So have to go, I have to go to the pharmacy, I have to go to school, I have to do my homework. Allow me to get out of class early. Allow me to ask a question. I will allow you to take a break, let's say. So let and allow basically mean the same thing. Same thing for have to and must. One has to, the other one doesn't. Just remember that. How is your mood? People say in Russian. Как ваше настроение? In English, we don't usually say that. Let's say we never say that. People understand it. Mood is a word in English. You can say that and people will understand you. But that's not how people talk if you're a native English speaker. So just ask, how are you? How's it going? What's up? How you doing? Not how is your mood. Sounds very strange, academic almost. How do you call this? Как сказать, basically. That's the Russian style. In English, you would say, what do you call this? You can say, how do you say? Как сказать. How do you say this in your language? How do you say that? But you don't say, how do you call this? That's not natural in English. And student, this one's confusing for English speakers because in America, a student means anyone from the age of 5 until the age of 35. If you are studying at a school, it could be part-time, it could be college, university, technical school, vocational school, kindergarten, elementary school, middle school, high school. We have all kinds of schools in America, and you're always a student. Now, technically, we do have the word pupil, and we have the word school children, schoolboy, schoolgirl, but these words are not very common nowadays. Typically, we just say student for all ages, all groups. And I understand that in Russian, student just means a university student, undergraduate, we would say in English. So it's a more limited term. So when people say student in English, don't assume they mean university students. They could mean any kind of student. They could be 5 years old, or they could be someone studying their PhD to get a doctorate. They could be a student also. So numbers. I didn't know this was a thing in Russian until recently, let's say a year ago. They like to write out the words. And I knew the comma thing. I already saw that before. But in English, we would say for the first one, 1.3. 1.3 million. That's how you pronounce that in English, 1.3. And it's a period, a dot, not a comma. Next one, 1,534,000,000 simoni. We make it a little bit shorter, and we add the dot, 1.5 billion simoni. We probably don't need all those little numbers. We'll probably round up a little bit. 7,000. Write it out. Make it a full number and put a little comma there. That's so that your eyes can understand how many zeros there are when you get to big numbers. But basically, once you get to millions, then they do the points. 1.5, 7 million, you could say 75 million, 120 million, but you don't write it out. You don't write out every zero. You write out the first part, and then the letters would be million. Capitalization norms, standards. If you're writing like a title for a subject of an email or a document or a news article or a class, a subject, anything, generally speaking, you should capitalize the first word, definitely capitalize the first word, all the nouns, all the verbs, even short ones like is, all the adjectives, and all the proper nouns. So what's left? You should have lowercase for articles. Articles are the, a, and prepositions. To, from, by, for, with. Those are the most common ones probably. And conjunctions. So and, but, or should be lowercase. So some say that prepositions longer than 5 letters should be capitalized, which I happen to agree with. An example of this, which is common, would be against. Against is a very long preposition. Around, A-R-O-U-N-D. Around. Against, around, those are 2 examples of long prepositions which can be capitalized. Let's see here. If you're writing for the newspapers, you can drop articles. So if you read, let's say, the New York Times or BBC, you'll say, hey, wait a minute. There are no articles in this. So instead of, in English, you would normally say the ministry. The Ministry of Internal Affairs, official speaks out, whatever. But in the article title, you can drop the. Tajikistan and India discuss the resumption of direct flights. That one's not a good example. But here you've seen we're dropping. Instead of a verb there, USA is, the United States is concerned, you can drop USA concerned about treatment of Uyghurs in China. But that about would be maybe capitalized, depending on the style guide you follow. So this is another big one. Whenever you have a time, a location, anything that sets up a duration or a place, you have to have a comma after that, and try to put those at the beginning of the sentence in English. So according to the document, comma, at the end of September, comma, in recent years, comma, during the meeting, comma. These are all time frames, and one is according to, which is also a prepositional clause, based on, a prepositional clause, after, time frame, apart from, prepositional clause, on July 19th time frame. Most often it comes up with time and location, but also you see prepositional places based on, according to, quotation marks. This one's tricky, and frankly, it looks weird to me still in English, but this is the rule. So the commas, periods go inside the quotation marks. So if you end a sentence with a quotation, you put the period and then the quotation mark. These things, these uncommon punctuation, these go after quotation marks. Normally this doesn't happen. It does happen occasionally, but much less common. Question marks can go either way. It gets a little complicated. Generally speaking, follow the first line there. Commas and periods go inside the quotation marks. That's what's going to happen most often in your life. So these actions are unacceptable, the president said. You see that? That's how it should look. That's the correct form. These figures are merely estimates. So you see the period at the end there is inside the quotation marks. The local resident asked, why don't they use the money to build schools? And there's a question mark inside the quotation marks. Usually that's how it works. Did the official respond to the journalist calling his actions irresponsible? So there, the question mark falls outside because it's quoting one word and the question is not in the quote. The question is separate from the quote. And you see in this, let me go back here. So the one where he says the local resident asked, why don't they use the money to build schools? The quote has the question in it. You're quoting a question. The second one, the last one there, the quote does not come from a question statement. So here's the rules here. That's a very, academic way of saying what I just said. But the first rule is the most important there. Quotation examples, capitalization. Okay, so if you're quoting a complete sentence, you should start the quote with a capital letter. The minister said, the mine will provide tax revenue. So the T is capitalized. If you're quoting a phrase or a part of a sentence, don't start the quote with a capital letter. The minister called the incident provocative. So it's not a sentence by itself. It's just one word or a couple words, lowercase. If you're splitting a quote in half, which is going to get complicated, you should not capitalize the second part. The incidents of border incursions, reports the press secretary, have increased over the past year. You see the first part starts with a capital letter, the second half lowercase. Okay, this is probably the most important part and maybe the hardest to grasp, but I'll try to keep it clear. When are we going to use an article or not an article? If it's uncountable, usually no article. Communism emerged in Europe. I studied history. Gas is expensive. Water becomes ice. You don't say the communism or the history, the gas, the water. Usually. Is it countable? Usually needs an article. These are general rules. You won't find this in a textbook, but this can help you in most cases. I met the governor. There are many governors. I found $1. There are many dollars. The Ministry of Defense. There are many ministries around the world. The best singer. You can have many singers. Exceptions. If you have a noun which is serving as an adjective plus a noun. So let's see here. Governor Brown, Boeing headquarters, Big Ben Tower, Times Square, London Bridge. So even though these things can be countable, bridges, squares, governors, headquarters, towers, those are all countable. When you have something that modifies it, Brown, Boeing, Big Ben, Times, London, these are nouns which become adjectives. Then you have no article. Many. Is it a specific group or are you speaking generally? So when you say I like questions, that means in general, you like when people ask you a lot of questions because it shows interest in you as a person. Or if you say I like the questions, you are talking about specific questions that someone asked you or someone sent you. And say you had very smart questions. I liked your questions. I bought shoes. So I went to the store and bought shoes today. And we don't know which shoes. You just found some you liked and you bought them. Versus I bought the shoes. I bought the shoes. Probably the person you're talking to knows what shoes you're talking about. They were at the store with you and you said, oh, I love those shoes. If I have some money, I'll come back and buy them. And so this is a specific thing that you know what you're talking about. The person knows what you're referring to. It's been talked about before. It's been introduced before. So this is the official language. So indefinite articles, a or an, are used when we are referring to an unspecified thing or quantity. Unspecified means we don't know exactly how much or what we're talking about. We use them when we don't know or don't care which thing we're talking about. Shoes. I bought some shoes in general. Doesn't matter which ones. I love shoes. I bought them. But if I bought these shoes, those are the shoes I dreamt of for many, many days. And now I have enough money and I bought them. So those are the shoes, the important, lovely shoes. So the definite article is the word the. That's definite. It precedes a noun when something specific is being referred to. So definite, specific, these are good words to know. Something we've referred to before, we've introduced before. We know the plan because it was talked about already. The government adopted a plan for healthcare reform, let's say. The government adopted a plan to encourage industrial development. Notice I said a plan. They adopted a plan to fight climate change. Now later, in the same conversation or the same article, you can say the plan says that we should, reduce carbon emissions from power plants or from cars to slow climate change. So that is the plan because we know which plan we're talking about. We introduced it already. The government developed a plan, they published a plan, and now we are implementing the plan that we just talked about. After a long day, a cup of tea tastes particularly good. This is definitely a British English example. Not a lot of Americans drink tea. Let's see the explanation. By using the article a, we've created a general statement, implying that any cup of tea would taste good after any long day. Doesn't matter which day or which tea. Just in general, tea is good after a long day. After the long day, the cup of tea tasted particularly good. So we're talking about a day which we've already been talking about. We know which day we're talking about. So you were telling the story of last Friday when you had a lot of tasks to do before the weekend and you were so stressed out and finally you got everything done. And so after that long day, after the long day, the cup of tea that your friend gave you was just so good. Particularly it tasted good. So we've shown that that was a specific day and it was a long one, and that specific cup of tea tasted good. This is not a generic statement. It's about a specific time and thing. Wordiness, this is a little bit hard to teach in a short presentation, but I'll give you a couple examples. This is our favorite Mark Twain, who really said, if I had more time, I would have written less. It may sound silly or illogical, but it's true. It's much easier to write a lot than a little. To make something very complex with a lot of information understandable in a paragraph or in one page is very, very difficult. And it's what a lot of diplomats like myself do every day. Today I had to summarize media reactions to some event from 10 different news articles and 40 different comments on the internet, and I had to put them all into one paragraph. Now that's really hard. I could have just copied and pasted all of them and it would be a 7-page document, but nobody would have read it. So I had to really spend some time to take out the key elements of each one and summarize everything and use every word carefully. The end, aha, I have seen the light. And now all these things are clear to me.